name's Danny Stott. I produce house music under the name Roland Nights and co-run the label Inner City Records. In this video we're going to look at using MIDI to create house music drum loops with the assistance of the Impulse drum machine. So for this we need to be in arrangement view, which can be accessed by selecting this icon with the 3 horizontal lines at the top right hand corner of the screen. To insert a new MIDI track, there are a few ways of doing this. The first way is to click Create on the top bar and then select Insert MIDI Track. The second way is, whilst an existing track is highlighted, right-click and select Insert MIDI Track. And the final way is to use the keyboard shortcut, which is Ctrl, Shift and T. Or if you're using Mac, Command, Shift and T. To add an Impulse drum machine to the track, firstly click the Ableton library folder, find Instruments and double click on Impulse, which will drop the machine directly onto the MIDI track. To add a sample to Impulse, find the sample you want from within your library folders and then just drag and drop the sample into slot 1 only. So to add the actual MIDI data, firstly create a MIDI clip by highlighting a section on the track, then right click and select Insert MIDI Clip. Double clicking on the clip will open up the editor at the bottom of the screen. And to draw in the MIDI triggers, select the pencil icon on the top bar and then draw the triggers in on slot 1 of the editor. The other option is to record the triggers in real time, firstly by ensuring the record arm is selected. If you can't see the record arm, ensure that all of these icons at the bottom right hand side of the screen are selected. Next, by using a MIDI keyboard or your computer's keyboard, find the key that corresponds with slot 1 and Impulse. You can see when it's working as the channel will light up green and the sample will play when the correct one is selected. You might need to change the octave to find the right one. Then hit record on the top bar and record the parts in. Don't worry too much about timing at this point, as the parts can be adjusted after recording. One of the main advantages of working with MIDI is the ability to quickly change samples that are not working with the track, by dropping a new sample over the existing one on slot 1 of Impulse. MIDI parts can be saved and used on future productions by exporting the MIDI clip. To do this, right-click on the clip and select Export MIDI Clip. You can then open a new project and drag the clip onto a new MIDI track. Then if you add an Impulse, you can add any sample you want to that, which will play in accordance with the MIDI triggers. So the majority of elements within a house music drum loop follow a relatively similar 4/4 structure. However, there are certain elements that can be adjusted more freely to add groove and movement to the track. This snare, for instance, can be moved around on the grid until it fits with the groove you're looking to achieve. To ensure the triggers are not snapped back to the grid marks, turn off the grid quantize settings. It may take you a while to find the correct position, and it's usually a case of trial and error. Okay, so in this section we're going to look at creating a new loop from a blank project. So firstly, add a MIDI track, create a MIDI clip, then add an impulse drum machine to the track, drop a kick sample of your choice onto slot 1 of impulse, and drop the first trigger onto slot 1. Once we have the first trigger, we can duplicate that 4 times across a single bar directly from the track itself, and then duplicate that over however many bars you want to work with. Once a kick has been created, rather than manually draw out MIDI triggers for the other elements, I'm going to duplicate the entire track and adjust the position of all the triggers simultaneously so that they fall directly between the kicks. I'm then going to drop the hat sample onto slot 1 of the impulse machine. I'm going to use a similar method for the clap and snares, duplicating the kick track and adjusting as necessary. For the clap and snares, I'm going to delete the first and third triggers and then join the clip together again using the consolidate function, which is Ctrl and J on the keyboard, or Command and J if you're using Mac. So what we have at the moment is a very basic loop, but it doesn't have a lot of groove, so I'm going to add an offbeat hat sample. To save time, I've edited the video where I recorded the part in real time and then adjusted to find the right groove. The next thing I'm going to add is an offbeat snare, again by recording in and adjusting by trial and error. So this is a basic loop ready to be edited for arrangement. Don't worry about the levels too much at this point as they can be adjusted after recording. Okay, in this section we'll look at how to adjust the MIDI triggers in order to add movement and prevent the track from sounding too mechanical. Two main ways of adjusting the MIDI parts are firstly in a global way by adjusting the delay of the whole track, and the other way is by moving the parts individually. The first thing to ensure is that the grid function is turned off, and to access the grid options, right click whilst in the MIDI editor and select off. The MIDI triggers can then be moved freely on the grid. A way to add movement to the hats is to use a push and pull method. By pushing the first hat forward and pulling the second one back slightly, it gives the loop a less robotic feel. In this section, we're going to look at how loops from sample packs can be used in a creative way and then manipulated to create something original. The first thing we're going to do is find a loop that roughly fits with the groove of the track. Then drag that onto an audio track and create a MIDI track with an impulse machine directly above or below the audio track. We're then going to draw out the MIDI triggers in accordance with the waveforms of the audio track. Once the MIDI triggers have been drawn in, you can add any sample you want to the impulse machine. For example, the original loop comprises a rim type sound, but if you wanted to, you could experiment with non-percussive samples such as vocals that can then be used in a percussive way. Then the pitch, decay and start time can then all be adjusted, along with the positions of the MIDI triggers to alter the overall feel of the track. If you find a particular sound within a sample pack loop but don't like the whole loop, you can extract that sample and drop it straight onto the impulse machine. To do this, drop the full sample onto an empty audio track, which should be positioned above a MIDI track with an impulse drum machine. Then find the part of the loop that you like. You can then isolate this part by highlighting a section and using the split function, which is Ctrl and E as a keyboard shortcut, or Command E if you're using Mac. And then you can drag the sample onto the first channel on impulse. Okay, that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed this video. For future videos and other free stuff, including a downloadable MIDI template Live 8 file, head over to MusicNewsTips.com. Until next time, all the best and take care.